I will introduce myself. My name is Debra Conrad, and I work with the Leadership Development Institute at Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida. We're a small private liberal arts school, and the Leadership Development Institute exists to actually provide scholarship and tuition money to the college through our leadership, coaching, mediation, conflict, and entrepreneurial programs. So one of those offerings is the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile, or the EMP. I'm the product director here. And if you decide to get certified, I will be with you every step of the way. We have a team to support our practitioners from around the world. But to just get you started, we want you to be able to learn a little bit about the assessment. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and introduce Maggie Dunn. And she's going to take us through the EMP, and then at the end, we will have questions. So I will be monitoring the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to mute myself and turn off my camera. But here we go. I'll turn things over to Maggie.
Well, welcome, everybody. So nice to see the smiling faces. We are delighted to have you with us today for this very brief overview of the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile. My name is Maggie Dunn. In addition to being our master trainer for the EMP, I have the pleasure of also serving as the coaching talent leader here at the Leadership Development Institute at Eckerd College. So that means working with clients who are interested in having executive coaching and working with our cadre of coaches to provide support to clients. Many of our engagements include the EMP. So would love to orient you to the many uses, the possible uses of the EMP, how you might use the EMP, and think about that with you. So the leadership development programs that we offer, when there is a focus on innovation, creativity, growth, or strategic direction, that is an ideal fit for the EMP. We also use it with one-on-one coaching and team building programs. We'll show you today that the EMP has the option of a group or team report that can be very helpful for teams who are interested in understanding their strengths and how they could be even more effective. The EMP has been being used in workforce development programs focused on entrepreneurship, community-based programs, university classes, and there are a number of research streams underway using the EMP. And so numbers, since the EMP was introduced to the market, we have administered over 39,000 EMPs, and more than 660 professionals have been certified to use the EMP with their students and clients. And those 660 plus certified EMP practitioners are in 40 countries and US territories. So we're very excited about the growth of the use of the instrument and the impact that it's having around the world. So one of the things we always like to clarify is what the EMP does and does not do, because this is an important, just setting the stage. So we do this with our clients and our students. The EMP does not produce an overall score that indicates whether you are or are not entrepreneurial. And it doesn't tell you whether you should or should not become an entrepreneur. Rather, it opens up some exploration for you. It plots your scores on 14 distinct elements of entrepreneurial mindset against our exclusive normative data for entrepreneurs and corporate managers, and then invites you to reflect on your own strengths and areas where you may want to enhance one or more elements of entrepreneurial thought or action. So the team at the Leadership Development Institute that researched and ultimately authored the EMP set out to discover how entrepreneurs in general differ from corporate managers. And all the ways that entrepreneurs differ, the team decided to call entrepreneurial mindset. So the tool helps you identify where you are most like entrepreneurs, and we consider these your entrepreneurial strengths, and then invites you to consider how those are working for you and where, if at all, you might want to move the needle to help you achieve your goals. So the research team and the authors quickly discovered that entrepreneurial mindset is multifaceted. It's not an either or proposition or a single number like an IQ, but it's more like a profile of various traits and abilities. And so we're going to do a quick poll and ask you a question. We'd love to get your thoughts on this. So here's the first poll for you to respond to. Is entrepreneurial mindset genetic? Is it 100% learned, or both? What would you say? We're seeing responses coming in. Thanks for participating.
They're fast and furious now.
Fantastic. I think we're about ready to end the poll and display the results. Okay, so we have 63% who say it is both and 38% who say it's a 100% learn. And so let me tell you what the research team concluded. The conclusion, and you'll see this as you look at the EMP report, is that some of the elements that distinguish entrepreneurs from non-entrepreneurs are probably a little more stable or hardwired, and we call those the personality dimensions. So those include things like risk acceptance, independence, preference for limited structure. There are 7 actually scales on the EMP that are categorized as personality dimensions. These are things that we tend to look at as characteristics that are a little more personality based. So for example, could we teach somebody who is most comfortable in a lower risk environment to recognize situations in which they could take greater risk? The answer is yes, we probably could, and it would likely be helpful for them if they wanted to be more entrepreneurial. But the chances are, if they started out as having a relatively low risk acceptance, we probably wouldn't change their overall orientation, and they'd likely start to reduce the risk that they take once they have that opportunity and they feel more comfortable around that. So while you can move the needle on all 14 dimensions of the EMP, including the 7 personality scales, we have suggestions for how to do that in our development guide, which I'll be showing you in just a few minutes. We find that for the scales that are categorized as personality scales, the scores on these scales have greater implications for fit. And when I say fit, we mean, for example, the kind of role that would be a good fit, the kind of function you feel most comfortable in. For example, somebody with a high preference for limited structure may not be as comfortable choosing to own a franchise, because that is a highly structured proposition. So just thinking about what's going to feel right to them. Now, the other 7 dimensions on the assessment are categorized as skill-based. And so when we look at the skills side of the assessment, there are more implications for what you might choose to focus on to develop. So for example, idea generation. There are plenty of techniques designed to help people become more comfortable and adept at brainstorming. And we think that with enough training and practice of those behaviors, you can become very well versed and it can become habitual. So those, you can really develop those skills. And let me unveil the 14 scales for you now. And you'll notice that one of the scales, the very last one, interpersonal sensitivity, is italicized. And the reason for that is, of all the 14 scales, this is the one on which entrepreneurs on average scored themselves lower than did corporate managers. So compared to corporate managers, entrepreneurs describe themselves as a bit more abrasive, as harder to work with. There are probably plenty of reasons for that. We think it's probably because entrepreneurs may tend to be a little more task-focused in general, but also because corporate managers are rewarded for interpersonal sensitivity, and it can actually be a derailer if they don't show sensitivity to the people they work with. So those are the 14 scales, and there is an excellent journal article for those of you who are interested in a deep dive on how the tool was developed, how the scales were ultimately chosen, the psychometric properties. There's an excellent white paper that was published in the Consulting Psychology Journal, Practice and Research, and here's that reference available for you. And we can also put that in the chat for you. So we're about to do our second of two poll questions. And the question here is, for whom is entrepreneurial mindset important? Which of these groups could benefit from an entrepreneurial mindset? Managers, entrepreneurs, students, or everyone? What do you think? Ooh, it looks like we might even have consensus on this one. Okay, Debra, I think we were close to getting a full response set here. Okay, so 100% of you who participated said everyone, and that's great. And you know, our thought process on this is that, and Debra, did we share the results?
Yes, we did.
Fantastic. Okay. So our thought process is that it all really depends on your context, and it depends on the particular scales that you're talking about in terms of the entrepreneurial mindset. So we could all probably agree very quickly that for the founder of a company, it would be very helpful to have an entrepreneurial mindset. But what about, for example, an air traffic controller? Would you want your air traffic controller to be entrepreneurial? And for me, when I think about the different scales, I would certainly want my air traffic controller to be very strong at execution, for example. So we think about the context, and we always ask the question with our clients and our students, which ones of these 14 scales are most important to you? And how would they help you achieve your own professional goals or meet the professional challenges that you're facing? And then we look at the data with them, their results, and we explore what it's telling us. So we go into any debrief or coaching session with a very open mind about what's important for each client, and we support them as they have their own reaction to the data. So we say in this team, context is everything, context is king. And yet we're going to suggest that for many organizational leaders, it can be very helpful to have and utilize an entrepreneurial mindset, especially when there is an organizational need for growth and innovation. So I'll walk you through really quickly a sample report just so you can see the format and how straightforward and user-friendly it is. So the first page of the report provides a one-sentence description of each of the 7 personality dimensions. There are full paragraph descriptions in the development guide, which everyone who takes the EMP will have access to. But for the report itself, there's a one-sentence definition of each of the scales. And then you see the graphical depiction of, in this case, Susan Sample's results. Hers are showing in the red. The green line represents the entrepreneurial norm group, and the blue line represents the corporate manager norm group. I'll just mention, by the way, to be included in our norm groups, to be in the corporate manager group, individuals had to not own a business, not co-own a business. They have to have a salaried position, and they have to have at least 2 direct reports. So that's what it takes to be in our corporate manager norm group. To be in our entrepreneur norm group, they have to own or co-own a business, and they have to answer yes to the question, do you consider yourself an entrepreneur? And we currently have in the corporate manager norm group over 1,000 individuals, and in the entrepreneur norm group over 1,700 individuals. So what do we see here with Susan's report? We see that she's very high on limited structure. She's high on need to achieve. Those look like two entrepreneurial strengths for her. Passion looks pretty high too, relative to the entrepreneur norm. So we would explore those with her as her strengths and areas that she might leverage those. And then we'd also explore some of the areas that show up as a little lower for her: risk acceptance, independence. What are her thoughts on how relevant those are and how that's influencing what she views to be her success at present and what she anticipates will be important? One of the really nice aspects of this report, and you won't see this in a lot of psychometric assessments, is that the authors chose to include the individual results for each item as a reference. So for every one of the 14 scales, you and the individual whose report you're using can look at how do they actually answer the item. So for example, I'll just flip back for one moment here. Let's say Susan said, gee, I don't understand why my independence score is so low. That's kind of bugging me. It just seems super low. I wouldn't have guessed that. We can take her then to that next page and look at, here are all the items that make up the scale for independence, and here's how you answered. So on the item, I don't mind taking direction, you answered, that describes me well. And so I'll point out too, some of the items you'll see are they're italicized, they're in parentheses. This is another best practice in psychometric assessment, and that is that there are 31 of the 72 items on the EMP are set up as to be reverse scored, so that the way the item is written, it actually describes the opposite of what the scale is measuring. And the reason that is done is it helps people when they're going through the 72 items to really pay attention and think more carefully about where on the scale, what number on the scale accurately represents their response to it. With 72 items, if every item were written describing a positive response that would describe what we would look for in that scale, people would probably get into the habit of staying on one end of the scale or the other as they continue and might not put as much thought into it. So that's what you see there. And then the report continues with the skill scales, same format that you saw on the personality scales. And then on the very last page of the report, there are two resources available. One is, and a lot of our faculty who are certified use this with their students, but it can really be helpful for anybody. The first link is to a brief video where one of the authors, Dr. Jennifer Hall, walks you through a debrief process. So a process to really think about your results, to understand and interpret your results. You can start and stop the video as you go through. A lot of the faculty actually assign this to the students to complete as part of the overall experience with the EMP. And it's particularly useful when somebody isn't going to have a one-on-one debrief with a certified practitioner. That second link on this last page of the report is to our development guide, which is a resource-rich guide so that everybody who takes the EMP gets access to that. And I'll give you just a preview of what is in that. What do people get as part of that? So they get a multi-page guide which has a chapter on every one of the 14 scales, and the chapters include that full paragraph description of the scale. It also includes a description of what would it look like if you were overusing some of the areas that are showing up as strengths. It includes resources for developing that area. So if you decide you want to be stronger, for example, at execution, there are a number of resources available. There are also reading resources available to do more reading on these different areas if you want to increase self-confidence, any of these areas. And then a number of resources on entrepreneurship, along with a multi-page development guide that a lot of faculty in particular find helpful with their students. So, options for addressing low scores on the EMP. One very valid option is to decide that the scales on which you score relatively low are not relevant to your job performance, your personal satisfaction, or your place in the universe, and just forget them. Another is to team with somebody or more than one person who has complementary skills. Another is to use that EMP development guide that we just talked about to find resources and strategies for moving the needle on one or more of the scales. And finally, you can engage with an EMP practitioner or an executive coach who has expertise in entrepreneurial mindset, or for students working with resources on campus or other co-curricular activities that may be available. So please keep in mind there's no single profile that captures the ideal entrepreneur or the ideal corporate leader or the ideal entrepreneurship student or the ideal human being. The richness and value of the EMP feedback results lie in the unique profile of the 14 scale scores interpreted, again, within the individual and organizational context. When we say individual context, we're talking about the individual's goals. What are they hoping to achieve, and how might the results of this assessment be helpful to them in thinking about that? Organizational context is, what's the organization asking of you, expecting of you, needing from you? And so there's no such thing as a good score or a bad score, or a good or bad profile. It all depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what you value. So I had mentioned at the beginning that we also, the EMP is available as a group or team report, and we have found it to be so valuable for teams looking to become even stronger as a team. So I'll just show you the format. Initially, the first part of the report is very similar to an individual report. In this case, the red line represents the average, the results for everybody on that team averaged together. So you can see that this team has entrepreneurial strength, it looks like, and need to achieve, action orientation, risk acceptance, limited structure. We see lots of strengths there. And then we also see some areas where they may not be as strong. We also, when individuals or teams are very high, we will explore typically with them, what might it look like if need to achieve, in this case, were overplayed? What might it look like if action orientation were overplayed? Are decisions being made with adequate thought and consideration and deliberation and inclusion of others, et cetera, where appropriate, for example? The big difference between the group report and the individual report is we have a page at the back of the report that shows you, for this particular team, what is the lowest score on the team, the individual with the lowest score. So for example, in independence, the lowest score on this team is a 2. The highest score on this team is a 3.2, and the average of the whole team is 2.55. You can see also how they compare to the corporate norm and the entrepreneurial norm, where there are strengths, where there are hidden strengths. Sometimes there are hidden strengths, and that's always a wonderful discovery, meaning that while the group score may be lower than the entrepreneur norm, we may have individuals on the team who are actually higher in some cases than the entrepreneur norm. And if that's a scale that the team concludes is important to them, it can be a great discussion about how to leverage that. We do have a fantastic resource available for those of you who are working with groups and teams. We have developed a team workshop facilitator kit that is available for a reduced rate when you bundle it with your certification. It is a complete program which can be duplicated exactly as it is designed, or it can serve as a basic framework for you to build your own program using the EMP. It's a true time saver for you because the content is fully developed, geared specifically toward teams. There are modules which provide flexibility in content and scheduling. They're ready to go exercises, a PowerPoint presentation, additional training materials, and then there's even a logistics outline for the pre-workshop and the post-workshop. So just wanted to mention that that is available at a very reasonable price. It's $150 if you buy it on its own. It's $125 if you bundle it with your certification. So what are the benefits of certification? Why get certified? Well, first of all, you learn how to interpret EMP results at both the individual and the group level. You then qualify for discounts on all individual and group EMP administrations. You gain access to a password-protected practitioner portal for administering, scoring, and managing the EMPs that you are using. You benefit from a library of resources that is there solely for practitioners, and you join a thriving community of practice with opportunities to attend and lead, if you would like, exclusive virtual practitioner forums. We also provide, for those of you doing research, we accept applications each academic year for a research grant which advances the science of entrepreneurship, and the program seeks to stimulate research using the EMP. And so faculty at institutions of higher education who are EMP certified are invited to apply, and it awards up to 50 complimentary individual EMP licenses. So that's a really nice benefit for those of you who are doing research. The EMP is available in a number of languages, as you can see here. And in terms of pricing, there is a sliding scale in it. And so for those of you who are educators, you qualify for a very reduced rate, which is $25 or $30. And there is an optional second administration within a semester for you for that low rate of 25 or 30. The group report is 100. If you're working with nonprofit and government clients, the rate's a little bit higher. And there's also an opportunity without that additional fee for the second administration. And then if you are working with corporate clients, then it's a little bit higher. And we would imagine that you would also increase your fees for that work. And so that's where what the pricing looks like. And we want to mention what's coming up, what's available for those of you who are interested in certification. We do the certifications in just under a 4-hour workshop with some pre-work and a little bit of post-work that includes an administration for you as part of your tuition. And we run them every other month. The next one's coming up in February. And we encourage you to apply if you'd like. Here's the pricing. Again, it's $400 for college and university educators, $600 for government and nonprofit, and then $750 for those of you in corporate settings and working with corporate clients. So for those of you who would like to experience the EMP, we are offering a free administration today. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, please email us at the email address that you've been using that's here displayed on the screen. And just a reminder, and within 2 weeks, please, to qualify for that. And just a reminder that we are housed within the Leadership Development Institute, which is a fantastic organization here at Eckerd College. We run a number of leadership programs throughout the year, and we also house the Mediation Training Institute, which includes the Conflict Dynamics Profile, our other proprietary instrument for those of you interested in supporting clients who are aiming to strengthen their conflict management skills. So at this point, we will open it up for questions.
All right. I am happy to answer any questions. I see that we actually have some certified practitioners on today as well. But feel free to unmute yourself or put anything in the chat. Again, my name's Debra Conrad. I'm the product director for the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile, and I can answer questions about the assessment, about certification.
I don't know that I have any questions, Deborah. I think it was pretty thorough. I'm interested in doing it, but I've got to put it into my annual, I'm an academic, so
Right.
I've got to put it into my annual plan for next school year. And that's really what I was looking to gather the information for cost and process for that.
Absolutely. And I can send you, everybody will receive a recording link to
Okay.
today's video. And I'm happy to send you pricing information to help you put your budget together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
When it's inside academia, as Maggie had mentioned, you can do one administration for $25 or for an additional $5 if you wanted to re-administer at the end of a semester or a 4-month equivalent. So it would be 30.
I guess I do have one question. She mentioned the research grants.
Yeah.
What is that cycle?
So after you become certified, and the certification process involves the 3-hour and 45-minute workshop over Zoom, you doing some pre-reading, you doing the EMP for yourself, as well as administering a trial EMP. And then it follows with a 30 to 40-minute one-on-one with a coach to make sure you're clear on the assessment and ready to use it with others. At that point, once you're deemed certified, you can submit a proposal for research, and we award up to 50 two administration licenses. So again, you could do that pre-post within a 4-month period.
Okay, great.
Yep. And if you have a bigger pool than that, you can purchase to enhance your study, or perhaps if you're doing something longitudinal, like several institutions currently are, maybe you're looking at first year incoming students and want to look maybe years later, then you can purchase to go with whatever you're awarded.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Stacy. Anybody else with questions that I could answer? And like I said, I will be sending a link to everybody with some additional materials, but we hope you'll consider joining us. And if there are no questions, I'll go ahead and close out the meeting. All
Thank
right.
you.
Wish everybody a great afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.